There we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's web chat, where we are going to be talking about how to increase conversions on your dealership website with Ian Cruikshank, VP of Sales and Marketing at SpeedShift Media, who will actually be on air with us momentarily. They are just getting out of a critical or urgent meeting and hopping on air. So he'll be here in a minute, and we'll welcome him. But thank you for those that are here. I know there was some confusion with the time and even the webinar ID. So for those that are here, obviously you got the right information. And Jeff and I both appreciate you taking the time to be here. You know, we are taking a different approach with our webinars, aiming to have them be more personalized and interactive. So you can see our cameras when we're talking. We have your typical screen share. And once Ian gets here, we'll be able to greet him and get going. In the meantime, while we wait on Ian, and I'll do that introduction, we are doing many different types of webinars. Jeff, by the way, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Yourself?
I do. I'm good. I'm flying by the seat of my pants getting here.
Is that a quiz question?
We're doing so many different types of webinars. We've got sponsored webinars like this. We've got a dealer webinar coming up pretty soon with our first dealer guest, which will be Mike Columbus.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, actually. That's going to be nice.
Yeah, that'll be a nice kind of, different vibe, talking about, building your brand. And he's got some good news to share. Mike and I met at the Matt Koenig's Rockstar Auto Conference, and he was on a Facebook Live interview with me and Tom.
You actually went to a conference called Rockstar?
I did. I even have a shirt to sport.
I wouldn't admit to that, honestly, but go ahead.
I just thought about this, folks that are watching live. You can see Jeff on camera, but when I talk, it's a still shot, and that's only because I have to have a video monitor up of the webinar. So when
I'm the only one on video.
Yeah. Hopefully Ian will turn his video on. Hey, I turned mine on, and you had a good laugh, so I turned it off real quick.
Yeah, thanks.
But just to finish up with some of the housekeeping, we also did a webinar last week around buying used cars from consumers. Great turnout.
Yeah, that went very well.
Yeah, we had 2 dealers on there, Aaron Gomez from Epic Auto Sales and Gary Wade from Moore's, and just had a nice conversation with the 2 of them and Tom Gregg at Vehicle Acquisition Network. People seem to really like that. So, yeah, just something to look forward to, folks. When this webinar is being recorded, so if you have to bail and can't finish it, I will have a recording of the webinar up as early as tomorrow. And what I'll do is I'll send out an email once that's ready with a link. The recording will go initially on the original registration page. So this form will get replaced with a link to the full recording. And probably within a week or so, we will have an edited down version of the webinar that focuses on the highlights, and that'll go up as a blog post up on DealerRefresh, like we did for Ilana's webinar about creating a personalized dealership website on smart targeting.
Hey, Ryan, check your chat. Ian's trying to contact you.
Okay. Wonder if he's not seeing I don't see a chat from him. Ian has to log on as a panelist. What is he typing to you?
Just says he's set up as an attendee. Do you have the code?
Yeah, he needs to just check his inbox for the panelist information. I don't have his panelist info because it's unique to each panelist.
It's 406.
Yeah.
So you were saying something about Ilana and Auto lead start.
Yeah, just so when
She was
we,
here. She was here yesterday. She came by to visit me.
yeah, that's what you said. She's in
Yeah,
Miami today, I think.
she is. I like her. I like her a lot. I like their product as well. We had a good conversation. They have a ton of data in reference to analytics. I mean, you got a lot of companies out there that basically take Google Analytics and resell that shit for a lot of money, right? So they've got all that information. And I told them, I was like, look, if you guys have all this, have all the analytics, you got the data, like, you know, so something in our industry that I don't know. When you speak to a vendor, they're always like, how do we get more people into our login, into our admin? Like, no one wants to log into our admin. And, you know, my answer is always like, well, it's because they got 30 other admins they got to log into every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, it's the OEM login that they need to. I mean, working at a Benz dealership, you know, we've got an admin and we got to log into, and gives us all the information that we need. So, you know, you end up having, you know, 5, 6, 7 logins. That's something I really like about the Dealer HQ or the Orkut.
The Okta.
Yeah, I like that, because from there you can just log into everything you need to with one click of a button. I got my service manager staring at me. Thank you, sir.
Well, I actually heard just the other day that CDK is integrating Okta. And folks,
Really?
Okta is for folks out there listening, Okta is a centralized dashboard system. In fact, we're in the early stages of setting it up as a DealerRefresh member benefit. So sometime over the summer, we're going to be rolling out these DealerRefresh member plans, and your basic paid membership will include that Okta dashboard. In fact, you can see we've already got designs up for that. It'll eventually link to an Okta login for DealerRefresh members. So yeah, I think you're going to see more companies embrace that.
Well,
with their
that was
platforms.
my whole point. I mean, we sort of got off down left lane with that, but that was the point. Was, you know, they have all this amazing data, and they're like, well, we're not really sure we should, you know, what we should do with it. Are the dealerships interested in it? You know, and I'm like, well, yeah, they
Ian
are.
made
I mean, Ian's on?
I see his video.
All right. Anyways, I'll finish up what I was going to say. There's, you know, dealerships are trying to figure out attribution. I mean, I was talking about attribution on DealerRefresh 5 years ago, and now all of a sudden it's a freaking buzzword, which I'm grateful for. That's awesome. But a lot of companies out there are taking the analytics, they're dumping them into a different dashboard and selling it for big money. So be careful with that, because it
Well, all of this comes down to is how can you act on the information? You know, the information itself is one thing. If you can't act on it.
That was Auto Lead Star's point. It's like, look, we got all this great data and we got all these analytics, but at the end of the day, what are dealerships going to do with it? And, you know, that was my challenge to them. It's like, well, that's a good challenge. Like, you need to figure that shit out. I know what I'll do with it. I mean, you know, and you know, Brian Pash has done a really good job at saying, you know, what are the how are people engaging with the BDP? What are the engagements? Are they looking at photos? Are they playing the video? Are they engaging with the forum, of course? Because I'll tell you, again, coming back to a Benz dealership, just coming back to the dealership world, I'm just like, you know what? I was drinking the juice for quite a while. I was like, oh, just do this. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do, and like, just do it.
Well, that's why you see companies like Clairvoy coming into the mix. I mean, they're trying to make sense of yeah, make sense of all this information. Hey, real quick, Ian, you can hear us, I assume. Are you ready to go?
I think I can hear you, and I think you can hear me. You might even be able to see me after all that ridiculousness that I've been going through on this end. So I apologize to everyone on the call. Thanks so much for coming into the call.
Yeah, man.
And gentlemen, you've done a fantastic job. I've been listening to everything you've been saying, all the dancing and keeping the conversation going. So great work. And I don't think I've seen any of our participants leave. So that's a good sign.
That is a good sign. It is a good sign. And what they don't know is this whole thing was staged.
That has everything to do with Ryan Girardi's freaking haircut.
Yes, that
which
always
nobody
helps.
can see.
Yeah.
So Ian, nobody, the attendees that are watching don't see all of our cameras. They only see who's talking. And because I have a monitor on mine, I have my video shut off so that I can monitor this separately. And so when I talk, they just see a still image.
And turn on the light, please. Well, there we go. We've just adjust the lighting in here to improve things. My colleague has helped me out, get some blinds down, all that sort of good stuff. Rocking the Speed Shift media wear today. You know, it's what we do here in the hood.
Speaking of, I can't show this. I'm rocking your awesome new pens that you passed out at Digital Dealer. Your Speed Shift media
good.
pens.
I'm glad. Yeah, we took a step up, and basically we went from the itty bitty teeny weeny version to something that's a little more impressive. So I'm glad you've got the new version. The bigger, more substantially weighted versions are a lot better for sure.
Well, it's smooth. Here, I'm going to try to show it. There you go. I got to put my other camera on. So these are nice, man. It writes nice. It's smooth. It's got some weight to it. So, folks, if you're out there,
we're pimping out pens.
We're going to put Ian on the spot.
What we do.
Speed Shift will send you one of their free pens just for attending actually, today.
This is when you step up a little bit and get into the Uber swag here. We're talking about the fun bottles. Yeah, we like to swag it up a little bit. We like to have a bit of fun. We've been enjoying it immensely lately. So
that might be a good fun topic, Ryan. Down the road is like, which vendor has the best swag?
Oh yeah, I always get the Friendemic glasses. I always have the colored plastic glasses. I grab like 2 or 3 every show, and my kids go through them like candy.
Exactly right. I was going to say my boys love them.
Mm-hmm. They're great. They're great. Now that bottle you showed, is that the kind that you can put a glass bottle in, like a glass beer bottle in, or is it just for
No. So this
water?
Is it's like your the Swell water bottles. So basically,
those things rock.
You know, that kind of job.
Yeah, I picked up one where you stick a bottle in, so it looks like a thermos, but it's whatever you want.
Ryan, you can hide your beer in one of those if you like.
You definitely can. You just have to upend it.
They'll think you're drinking a healthy drink, not a beer.
Yeah, exactly right. Just confuse them all, baffle them.
Well, hey, I'm glad you made it. I'm sure everybody else is, and like you said, folks, we appreciate you standing by, and hopefully you're enjoying some of the banter. This is Ian's second time with us. He was here last month talking about pre-owned, don't get owned marketing your pre-owned vehicles.
Yeah.
Which you can find on DealerRefresh, the full recording of that on DealerRefresh. But Ian, before you get started, before I hand things over to you, I see you guys won a President's Club Award earlier this month at Driving Sales, the most valuable insights. Do you want to maybe speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And in fact, super excited about that. In fact, as part of our meetings over the last couple of days, we were just going over that again. And it's exciting. It speaks to, what a lot of us have been thinking about and talking about a lot these days. You guys were just talking about, different metrics and metrics that should be used in the process. The vehicle detail page is such an important part of vehicle marketing today, and there's no doubt about that. And really what we did is we just got into, the real question, which is, okay, it's all well and good that this vehicle marketing is super important, but what does it actually mean? What are the engagement metrics that are particularly important on the VDP? So we did quite a bit of research, and even there is an embargo on that data, but I can give you kind of the skinny on that, where basically what we've seen in tracking every possible category of engagement on the vehicle detail page. So whether you're talking about, gosh, social sharing or video and photo views,
Photo
or
views,
lead
video
forms,
views, 360s. Yeah.
all those pieces.
We were just
So
talking about
all those coming through, right? Well, we tracked all of them as they lead to the sale, and there's only one that actually increases in the time going towards a vehicle being sold, and that's photo engagement. So photo or video or 360 engagement. But
hold on. Was
Yeah,
it
man.
photo, video, or 360? Which one was it?
So we tracked 5 categories. One of the categories was media engagement, so photo, video, or otherwise. So that's
you grouped them. You didn't separate them out.
Yeah, exactly right. So
that makes me mad. That makes me mad. You want to know that?
Well, I'm going to infuriate you more by saying that we've categorized anything that you could submit an email on. So whether it's a lead form or whether it's a test drive form or whether it's those things, those are all categorized. Now, what's fun and what you should stay tuned for is we're going to be busting out a whole bunch more information, because at that event you've got 9 minutes to communicate the value proposition. So you really got to pare it down. But we're going to be talking about that a whole lot more at Driving Sales Executive Summit on the main stage coming up in October, where we're going to unleash all of the information, all the segmentation, all those pieces that you might be interested in.
All this promoting for driving sales, I feel like we should get paid for this.
Yeah, and that's why the check's in the mail.
They send me money, Jeff.
Oops. You not need banks.
Yeah, you didn't forward that on? Come on.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, and we were sort of having this conversation. Maybe that's why you brought it up, because you were listening, and that we didn't
like that.
Yeah, you're a sneaky listening. We're just talking about the engagement on the DDP and what's going on, and for me, being at the dealership and using my resources and bandwidth, I still sometimes question, like, God, I take a lot of time taking the videos of cars sometimes.
Yeah.
And, I'm just like, is it really worth it? I mean, a lot of websites sort of hide it. Car Gurus doesn't even offer videos, and we use Car Gurus.
Yeah.
We use Cars.com. Cars.com did make a big adjustment just maybe a month or 2 ago. So now over on the right-hand side of the photos, you've got like a big, you get to see like an icon of the video with the video play button. So it's a nice call to action there.
Yeah.
And something that I'm exploring now, which only a few companies out there offer, is the 360 sort of that spin.
Yep.
Whether it's exterior, interior.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, that adds, for me being at the dealership, like that adds another freaking, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes of work, of merchandising per car. So everyone's out there, it's like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, do the 360 spin, do the video, do the photos. And I'm like, do you know how much time? That's a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah.
And I'm a small dealership. I can only imagine what it is for a large dealership.
No doubt.
Crazy.
No doubt.
So how can you do it and be efficient?
And
I know a lot of the companies out there, like Autos on Video, is trying.
One of the things that we saw, Jeff, is so with that, in looking in aggregate, the number of cars that are being viewed and the number of images that are being viewed, and clearly, when we're talking about photos, videos, and 360s, we're primarily talking about photo as the data set, right? That is grossly going to outweigh the other data points. Now, what was interesting is that's the only one that saw a steep increase as it went to the sale of the vehicle. So the day the vehicle sold, there was significantly more images being viewed in the days just prior to 60 days prior to that. If the vehicle sold within 40 days, the curve was steeper. If the vehicle sold in 20 days, the curve was steeper, right? All leading up towards that point where people are looking at multiple views of these cars. Now, they're never looking, it seems, there's outliers, of course, but they're not looking at 30 pictures of the car. They're looking at 5 to 8 pictures of the car on average, right? So there's not that need that, I think we've all been talking about, you got to have a lot of pictures, you've got to have the video, you got to have my thinking in seeing this information, we got to dig into it more before I can say this unequivocally. But when we're looking at that information, it says to me, you've got to have real high quality images versus a lot of images, right? So you got to have great shots of that car, because that consumer that's getting excited about, oh my God, I'm going to buy this car in the next few days. I'm showing my buddy, I'm showing my wife, I'm showing my coworkers. The steepness of that interaction with photos is increasing. The amount of photos that they're looking at is increasing, but it's not going above 10 on average, right? They're looking at those hero shots that they want to see to get excited about the car.
No,
so maybe they're saying, Jeff, he's saying maybe you could be more selective on what you make media out of, and focus on things that you know or believe are going to really matter the most, instead of doing the same thing for every car.
Yeah.
And I think you're speaking more on used cars here versus used, or no?
So we looked we assessed the whole kit, right? And we assessed new and used. In the research that we'll be presenting in October, we'll be breaking out new and used. So it'll be fun to see if there's much difference between the two. Obviously, we expect there to be more photo views within pre-owned, because you're going to look at more angles, more details to know that it's in good shape, that kind of thing. But assumptions that we got to see in the data.
And just curious, how many dealer sites did you monitor, and for how long?
So we monitored over 50,000 cars. So quite a large number of sites. You can break that down at about, maybe on average 150, 200 cars per store.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That's exciting for us.
So what are we here to do? Talk about increasing online conversions?
Yeah.
Are you ready for me to hand over controls and make you presenter?
Born ready. Yeah, definitely. I'll keep an eye on this system here then, and make sure that I click the right stuff instead of going too crazy. So yeah, fire away.
All right. So let's see. Find Ian. Make presenter. I think that means I make you host. See how that works. Doesn't seem right. Hold on. How did I do this before? Ding dong. Yeah, I think I have to make you host. I think that's okay. Guys, as everyone knows, we're using Zoom. And let's see what happens if I make you host. There's a learning curve. It's a great platform, but there's a little bit of a learning curve.
No
So,
worries.
Ian, I just made you host. Did anything amazing happen on your end?
Not yet. Let me see. I'm gonna click my share screen button.
Yeah.
And so it says it'll stop sharing your screen and it'll start sharing mine. Do we want to continue?
Go for it.
I'm gonna go with this one here. And
And
do we see my screen? Yeah.
There we go.
Friggin' awesome.
And we're all still here. Good.
That is rad. So here, I'm just going to adjust one little thing here to make sure that we're all 100% good. And I think we've got it dialed. Okay, so we've been going on about a little banter here, having a bit of fun. So I'm going to make sure that the fun part of this one is a little shorter, but I am going to have a bit of fun. Right, so I typically, do a bit of this is the serious guy intro, and oftentimes you get the serious guy intro. I'm not that serious a guy, right? I am not that serious. I'm a little bit more like this guy, maybe a little. Actually, I can't really say like this guy.
Yeah,
okay, Leia. And then things got really weird, and my wife and I were Little Bo Peep and the Chippendale Sheep. So there you go. This is like the craziness.
There you go. Woo.
So we went through that. We went through that as fast as we could because I don't.
Normally that's like 10 minutes. 10 minutes of Ian.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to
stand-ins.
have to dwell on that sort of stuff. But the other piece of it is, of course, we're coming from the Great White North, and so everybody should put up their hand if they've been to Vancouver before and they know about these stereotypes. And the reality of it is, we're dealing with some real fun stuff these days, particularly this fact. This fact here, which is kind of a good fact if you ask me. A ton of rain, which is entirely exciting. And of course,
did yoga for the first time earlier this month on a cruise ship.
How did that work out for you?
It was great. It was great.
You made it back. You made it back.
I did. I got my ass kicked more than I expected to, but it was good.
Yeah, right on. Cool.
You have no comment.
There you go. And then briefly, if you guys know us, of course, we're Speed Shift Media, and you can check us out when you got the chance. But we're not here to go into that too much. We're here to ask some questions, and we're here to actually go through what people can do to actually get more out of their marketing, get more people coming back. Effectively looking at remarketing, right? So looking at what are people doing to drive efforts on the sites, and how many of the marketers out there actually feel that returning visitors are more engaged, right? So typically that returning visitor is a more engaged shopper, right? The first time they come, they see what you've got, and then they come back and they're digging into it a bit more. Right? But the reality is we're spending most of our budget finding new shoppers, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I just want to make sure that when people are investing into bringing those customers back using retargeting solutions, that they're taking those methods further every chance they get, right? Because there's so many retargeting solutions that are going to get people to come back that are frankly lackluster. The typical site section retargeting, right? So banging someone on the head with a frying pan and saying, come on back, come on back, come on back, come on back, is just old, right? We got to get into something a bit more because we want those engaged visitors to come back more regularly, right? So just to make sure that everybody's up to date and totally clear on what retargeting is doing in their world, or what retargeting is, real simple graphic, right? Obviously retargeting, and some may be new to it, but I figure you all probably have a pretty good idea. When they're coming to your site, you're finding them again in the marketplace on other sites that they're looking at and trying to attract their attention back. So when you're talking about Facebook retargeting, or the dynamic, or the remarketing of the Google machine, so in the Google Display Network, you're talking about putting a tracking pixel on the website. So if you're doing both, you're using both of these different tracking pixels. The cookie is placed on the consumer's site, or their mobile, or their tablet, and you're then retargeting that customer. And generally, it's a message like we see on the right-hand side of your screen, right? It's that message saying, "Hey, I've got cars. I've got something you want, or you've been here, and I want you to come back again." Not particularly exciting. So what we're going to break down here is that there's actually a bunch of different levels of retargeting, right? What I mentioned off the top, that frying pan in the head, that's site section retargeting. And you see that all the time. You see that from all sorts of tools out there in the market. You see it in travel, you see it in probably in real estate, and all sorts of different environments. You're definitely seeing that happen a lot of the time within automotive, where people are just saying, hey, come back to my store. You were at my store. Here's my store's branding. We've been in business for 30 years. Come back, right? And it's just not a compelling message, right? It's been done. People have got used to the fact that that's out there, and it's just not delivering the value as much as it did before. Segmented version, right, where you can do site segmentation. We'll break that down a little bit. Then we'll get into vehicle-based, typically last vehicle seen type of remarketing. And then the predictive type of remarketing. So dynamic and predictive retargeting. We'll talk about that last because that gets pretty exciting. But we'll break these down. But any questions from you guys off that, or does that all make sense for what we're going to cover?
No, I'm good so far. I personally have been in display advertising for, oh my goodness, 5 plus 10, 7 plus years.
Yeah.
So, before retargeting was even available. So
yeah.
I think retargeting is great.
I guess my only question is, you go down and I guess you sort of answered it. You want new visitors in order to be able to retarget to those customers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
what's one of the main, other than branding, of course. Maybe there's paid search to go along with it. I think SEO for car dealerships is a touchy subject.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to remarket to customers, you got to have new customers. You got to have new visitors, new traffic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And that's the basis for that. So anytime you're running a retargeting solution, you're going to be retargeting the traffic on the site. When talking about predictive, you're going to be retargeting people that have looked at cars. When talking about vehicle-based, you're going to be talking about people that looked at cars and retargeting them specifically. But you got to get those new people into the site. And when we run programs for our customers, within the auto audience network, when we're using dynamic inventory technology to get people to come to the site in the first place, there needs to be that come to the site in the first place. And that's, probably the nuance of finding that new in-market shopper is more difficult. In fact, when we're talking about what we do online, we're talking about all the fun stuff, and the retargeting is like the easy part. That's when someone has actually come and knocked on your door and given them your your phone number or whatever it is and said, hey, I'm interested, and then you're making sure to give them messaging to retain their interest. So yeah, I mean, the hard part, the tricky part is getting them there in the first place, but making sure that you're getting them to come back again and again, because we all know, I think, this intuitively, if not from a data perspective, that the customer does not transact the first time they come. They transact on the third, fourth, maybe 10th time that they come back to the site. I know it took me a long time when I was deciding on my most recent vehicle purchase to decide that, yes, that was the one, before actually going to the store and getting it. And I looked, did that thing that I was talking about before. I showed it to my friends, showed it to my peers, showed it to my wife. This is what I'm going to go check out. And, it's retargeting that helps you get there. It's your own decision-making that helps you get there. So making sure to do each of these pieces correctly is going to be super valuable.
Ian, I'm curious and I'm glad you're getting into site-wide retargeting first, because, the segmentation, vehicle specific seems natural, but I think a lot of people might hit a site and there's nothing of interest there, and so they pop off and suddenly they're going to get retargeted to.
Yeah.
And, I'd be curious to know what the win ratio is for those kind of distant shoppers.
Yeah.
Does retargeting win any of them over, or what?
Significantly less, right? And you'll see probably in each of these, and the measure for whether the specific retargeting ad is delivering value is twofold. One is the basic measure of click-through rate. Is it getting more attention? Or if there's some form of engagement you can have within the ad, is it getting attention? The next is post-click performance. And so when we're talking about typical retargeting, we generally see folks that are delivering they're doing site retargeting, and they may be getting a 0.02% click-through rate, so a very low click-through rate. And then when getting into site section retargeting, that can get into increasing into maybe 0.06 to 0.08, that sort of thing, maybe even up to 0.1. Well, when we're talking about predictive retargeting and showing them the cars that they've seen or vehicles that they would be interested in, you're getting into a click-through rate of over 0.1%. So you're even into 0.2 and 0.3. So where you're growing that potential each time to be able to get more attention from that consumer out there. And really, it's about relevancy. You don't have a lot to go on. So just like Ryan was saying, right? So for folks listening, segmentation starts at the site. And if you only know that this person came to your homepage and they split, well, you're pretty limited in what you can show them, but you want to make sure that you're still retargeting that consumer, right? So you maybe want to refresh your communication on a regular basis. You maybe want to run programs where you're running multiple different ad units. So if we're talking about this, if we're talking about the creative, right? If we're running this Westwood ad, I want to make sure that I'm running a program that's maybe running at 25% of different types of creatives. So 4 different creatives that are out there, so that when I'm retargeting that site-wide person, that person that hasn't given me any specifics, I'm going to say, okay, I've got this over here, I've got this financing rate. Maybe you were a service interested party, right? I've even got service stuff going on. Constantly hitting that person with the same branding message is going to be significantly less interesting. And it's, really all the way through, we're breaking it down with this guy. So you guys all know this guy. This is Chad. He's the salesman on your floor. And Chad says, hey, I just want to say thanks for coming in today. I really think it was great. And by the way, did you find what it was that you were looking for? So it can't be a more developed conversation than that. When someone only has that basic level of information, it can't be more concrete, and that's okay if that's all you've got. So we'll get into more detail about when people have got more, but the simple way to set this up, so you can take screenshots of this, or people will probably get the deck or recording later, but pretty straightforward to set up your site-wide retargeting. So with the simple parameters within the AdWords environment. Excuse me, I'm just going to cough a second. And then within the Facebook side of things, again, same sort of idea. So you create your custom audience, you go into website traffic and you see what's going on there, and you just select that it's anyone who's visited your website. And you can see, right, you've got that on the top left, you've got someone saying, okay, in the last 30 days. So you can change the time and change some parameters, and we'll talk about some areas where you should be considering those sorts of things, how long you retarget someone for, all that kind of stuff. But
I think to clarify on that,
yeah, go ahead.
For folks watching this, either live or recorded, to take advantage of that with Facebook, you need to have your pixel installed, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And
so
what's
all of these are dependent on having a pixel in place first.
Yeah, and what's the max length? Like you could do past 30 days. What can you go? How far back can you go?
So you can go quite a while, you know, because effectively, if that person still has the cookie on their website or on their browser rather, you could go back probably 90 days, 120 days. I don't know if there in fact is a limit, but you're going to reduce the number of people when you're going back that far in some respects. Like you're not going to reach those folks. And frankly, you're likely to irritate. How long is it going to take someone once they're at the dealership part of their decision? They're likely only 30 days away from making a purchase, right? Because they've already gone through the other parts of the path to purchase in deciding on a make and model situation, doing all their reviews, checking out third-party listings, and now they're getting down the funnel where they're thinking, okay, I'm really considering Jeff's store, right? And now I'm going to come in and make that happen.
Good.
Okay. So on the pro tip side of things, right, you want to get going within retargeting if you're not already. And, you know, that piece that we talked about, a few different creatives so that you can keep things fresh. Realistically, on the effectiveness scales, we talked about click-through rate as far as a potential measure, right? So pretty low on the effectiveness scale. But really, you know, there's important aspects here that you should be considering, right? And it just simply doesn't get specific enough for vehicle sales, so you can't be 100% sure that you've got that right person when you're not, when they haven't gone deep enough into the site, or if you're just doing this when they have gone deep into the site, right? If they've gone all the way into it, you want to make sure you use that information. So that's when we get into site segmentation as the first step of using more of this information. So here, a consumer has come in and they've looked at a particular section. They've gone in and they've drilled into service, or they've gone in and they've drilled into a particular model in new vehicles, right? They've looked at the new car builder for the particular F-150 that they're interested in. So then, actually, that works out. I'm glad I said F-150 because that's part of our creative example here, right? So then you can target that consumer with a specific piece of creative that is representative of what they were interested in. Not, hey, I've got all models of Fords. Not, hey, I've got Eco, I've got you know, your sedan, I've got the trucks, I've got a van. You can actually say, I've got the type of vehicle that you were interested in. So significantly more interesting, and you can do this within the Google machine. And what this does is it gives Chad the opportunity now to say, hey, you know, I saw you were checking some cars out. You know, did you decide and realize that we have this, you know, great financing option on the specific cars that you were looking at, right? So in that F-150, you were checking out those pieces, and we've got some financing rates available on that specific model, right? So within that section. And in getting this sort of stuff set up gets a little more complex. What you need to then understand is how your website, and we've just done this for dealer.com, but how your website is broken down based on the URL structure, what that means. So the website address structure, all those little pieces that come after your domain. So .com/new. So if you're just focusing on new vehicles, you can section that area off. New Acuras, section that area off. So getting into those pieces and being able to understand whether it's inventory or if there's another section being service, right? So then you take that information and you work through within the parameters that exist within the Google machine, right? Going in, selecting those audiences, now being more specific and say, you're saying, okay, in this section, we're going to use a new car program. This remarketing list is going to be for people that have checked out new cars, and this is what the web address looks like. Okay, keeps going as far as getting the targeting set up, display network, and then you select your new car segment. right? So you can see that new car segment that exists right down here now. So you can select that list and target people with a specific ad type. And then your ad group is going to be serving to everyone that's been considering new cars, right? So that's the site section side of things. Breaks down fairly similarly on the Facebook side, right? So you can see on that right-hand side over here where you're going to be breaking down the inventory pieces and putting in that web address to make sure that it's clear, setting your parameters and setting your creative, right? And then you've got the Facebook side working as well. So the kicker here is some people will fall into multiple segments, right? And that's okay. In some respects, you might have someone that comes in and they're looking at maybe a minivan and a crossover. Not a bad thing to have a minivan ad and a crossover ad, right? So they may be receiving both, right? So they're going to fit into multiple segments, and just to be aware of that and understand what's going on there. Typically, they're not going to fit into, unless the service situation is really bad, you know, they're coming to look at service and they're also looking to get a new car because they've been into service maybe a few too many times. That can happen as well. So on the performance side of things, that gets more effective. So into the medium category, right, being able to understand things a little bit more. You know, you can get into those offer bases. So you can understand, or you can infer from what they were checking out within their site, what site section, and you can create a better, more relevant message for that customer.
Question for you, Ian.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you and Jeff are probably more wizards at this retargeting thing for dealers specifically, but in order to classify your visitors into these segments, is it based off of something you have to do on Google Analytics? What gets them into those segments? Obviously, it's what they look at,
yeah,
it's their behavior, but what's that trigger?
Right on. So within the tagging, right? So on, like when we go back, the first site, you know, this and what that the pixel that's on the site is able to keep track of where they were on your site. So when you set that pixel up, right, it's different, and it's going to go a step further in a sec when we get into dynamic, because then you need a dynamic tracking pixel or retargeting pixel. But with these, it's going to work with the standard site section or website pixel for retargeting. Okay. So it's capable of picking up on that information. Good question.
Yeah, so the pixel's feeding all this behavior to Facebook and to Google.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly right. So with that, and past the effectiveness piece, we get into segmentation. So you know, a more refined vehicle-specific segmentation. So when we're saying, okay, VIN-specific segmentation, we're saying, okay, this customer came and looked at this little blue car, but we're going to retarget them with that little blue car, or with these, you know, Jeeps that we're talking about here. So this customer over here, you know, came in and saw they used 2014 Jeep Cherokee Limited, and so we're going to retarget them with that specific unit, right? So most often this type of format is done with a customer that is looking at the very specific unit and then targeting that person with last vehicle seen. And you know, this is taking it a little bit further, making things a little bit more interesting for Chad as we're talking with him. He's basically saying, hey, saw that you were checking out that 2017 Ford F-150, and you know, why don't you come on in for a test drive? Right, so he's got a more refined approach. He knows that they were looking at that XLT, and he wants to follow up and make sure that they come in for that test drive. So that ad unit that you're putting out there could be, you know, the call to action on it could be schedule a test drive, right? And so click on that button, schedule a test drive. Then you've got more insight. You're taking someone right to, hopefully if you're doing that, you're taking them right to a landing page where they can schedule a test drive for that specific vehicle, right? Something pre-populated, and they can just go for it. So, you know, interesting piece there. Now, often with last vehicle seen retargeting, you're going to end up, because last vehicle seen, if you look at the research, and Dadium back in the day did a bunch of research on this and figured out that the last vehicle seen was actually more often than not a dream car. So the car that the customer wasn't actually focused on in the time that they were searching, but they're, you know, maybe they're searching, they're looking at that Ford, and then all of a sudden they go and look at the Ford GT, right? And they leave the site after checking out the Ford GT's vehicle detail page, and lo and behold, then we're targeting them with the Ford GT for the next week until they come back and look at something different. Right, so there's some kind of hurdles that you got to think about there, but certainly a good piece. Now, creating that piece, right? So now you've got to get into creating a feed and getting the information into the system. So this is where things get start to get a little more complex when you're talking about vehicle retargeting. Tagging the website with that, like I said, that special dynamic remarketing tag, right? So it's no longer the tag that you had before, right, where we just said, okay, we're going to remarket that person, we're going to retarget that visitor. Now we're going to do it in a dynamic way. So now we're going to make sure that we've got that person looking at the specific car, and we're going to say, hey, this is the unit you've been looking at. This is what you're going to be retargeted with. So that ends up making it a little bit different, a little more complex. And then, of course, you've got to get in and go through the dynamic creative process in Google's ad gallery and create those dynamic ad units, okay, and go through that. So you don't have to read this part, but it's available for you when you've got access to the slides down the road. But these are the steps, and of course, there's more steps in getting that going. So the complexity starts to increase. On the Facebook side of things, same sort of idea. Creating those product catalogs and the data feed. It's all quite similar, and of course available at the end of this link here.
Ian,
so, yes, go ahead.
Speaking of making slides available, will you make this deck available for viewers?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah, more than happy to. We can get it over to you in a BitLink or something.
Well, I think typically you guys set up a landing page on your side with the webinar recording, and you'll put this up there.
This is a great example, Ryan, of me being the guy talking and going over this stuff, and Reynold, of course, will make sure that happens for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is advanced stuff. I mean, if you don't do this, this is all Greek in a way.
Yeah.
I think for our viewers. Everyone's some are at more advanced levels and some at real fundamental levels. But if you're at that fundamental level, I mean, I don't think you'd know where to get started.
Yeah, and that's so. I would say two things. One is if you're looking at this and you're totally scratching your head, and like this slide says, right, it's not exactly easy. Right, this is some of these things when we get into segmented and when we get into predictive, this is some tech savvy stuff. And the predictive, takes it even further, where you're going to either want to, if it's really making you bonkers, you're going to want to grab that partner to work with. If you want to dig into these all the way up to this most recent one, all the way up to segmented retargeting, so vehicle segmented retargeting, you can do all of this within the Google machine. It just takes more effort. Now, we all have looked up how to DIY something in the way of plumbing or electrical or whatever in our house. The DIY for the digital world exists there too, right? So to be able to get lots of great advice, lots of ways to do stuff, and finding that person, if it's not you in your store, but finding that person who likes to dig into this stuff, who's a little more jazzed about it, giving them the impetus to go down that path and start to explore.
It seems like a tremendous amount of work. I mean, and from your experience, let's maybe say a single store, single franchise, single rooftop dealership, to have a retargeting strategy in place. How much time should they expect to be putting into it on a weekly basis?
Great question.
Optimizing it,
Yeah. So the hardest part is for the first two, frankly, straight up site retargeting and taking the time to create 4 campaigns that you're going to run in that, so that there's some kind of rotation as opposed to just one ad. That's something you could probably do, in an afternoon. Like, that's not going to be particularly taxing, provided you've got the creative, or if you want to add the creative time, whether you're outsourcing creative or you've got a designer or you're just going to hack it up yourself. Those are things that are going to add a little bit more time, but the setup of that is not particularly difficult. Even site section retargeting, not particularly difficult as far as going in and putting those details into play. So that's kind of a good starting point. When you get into these pieces, this is where, if you're going to do it yourself, we're talking about organizations that have multiple people within their marketing team, and they're typically doing it for multiple stores, or they've got one person on staff for that single point, and they just friggin' love it. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, you've got all sorts of folks out there that can help you. So we power many of our agency partners with the technology to help their customers do this kind of stuff really easily. Or SpeedShift can help people do this stuff really easily. So it really is the question. You can do quite a bit. As we get into this next piece, actually, we'll go over the effectiveness of this one first, but into the predictive one, it's requiring, data management platform and all that kind of stuff. It really goes beyond the scope of what someone can do on their own. And
I'll throw this out there. I mean, I think like a lot of like any good dealer-vendor relationship, even if a vendor brings on a partner like SpeedShift to help with this, they still need somebody there that's going to embrace what's going on, be collaborative, and help do the tweaking, optimize. You guys can't do.
And that's even a must, just to make sure that everything's doing what it should. And actually, I just had a really fun time. I think Jeff, you've been up speaking at Canadian events in the past. So I was at an event in Toronto and speaking at that event. And one of the things that folks were bringing up, because I was talking about how to make vehicle detail page analytics understandable for the GM or understandable for dealer principal, right? Like, give it to me in plain English. Tell me, I don't need to know, all the vehicle detail page this and time on site that and efficiency this and focus that. Like, there's too much jargon. Tell me in business language, straight up English. Am I making money? Are we doing well? Are our partners doing well for us? And if your partner can't communicate the value proposition in plain English, well, that's probably quite problematic. So being able to communicate that as a partner, but having someone on site, and we talked about that, and it was a question from the audience, like, should I have someone within my team that really gets this stuff? And, that someone in your team can be the person who's organizing and keeping all of your vendors working synchronously, right? Or making sure that all of your vendors are actually living up to their promise. All of those aspects are really important, and finding that one team member that can help you with that, I believe, is still super valid.
They're extremely important. The problem is dealerships don't know how to pay those people.
Yeah. Don't know. Would you say don't know how to or don't want to?
Both.
Both. Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, and that's actually, it was interesting. Jen Dunstan put out a great blog the other day, and she called out having been at that event and listening to me talk, and she was at the table with a group of guys that were sitting around, and these were, dealership owners that were saying, hey, flat out, do you look at this stuff? I don't really look at this. I know I need to. I don't really understand it. It makes me feel stupid. Like, it was this kind of conversation going down the path. And that's difficult.
It is. It's extremely difficult. And, Steve Stauning just sent in a quick message, and I totally agree with him. He's like, they're the first people to get, they're the first ones to get fired when sales flatten. So,
Yep.
it's a vicious cycle. It really, really is.
Yeah. No, it is for sure. And the kicker is, when was the last time, you got really excited about stats, right?
It's been a while for me, but I'm trying to re-engage.
Yeah, and that's it. And now the kicker is there's this shift, right? It's been so tangible. Like, showroom activity is so tangible. And now we're all e-commerce people. Now we all have to have, quantitative teams or work with quants that can help us dig into this stuff and, understand the business intelligence of what's going on for all of those people that are still coming to visit us. Right, and the most recent research from J.D. Power saying that only 24% of people will actually complete a lead form. The other 76 are still buying cars, right? But the only thing that they're doing to indicate their interest can only be assessed within Google Analytics, and it's painful, right? But it's the reality that we're all struck with, that we need to be dealing with this on a regular basis, and it's really just an unfortunate reality. And over time, I think we'll get more comfortable and more adept at the who and being willing to pay and keeping them on staff.
But the bottom line is, your percentages, your your click percentages, your CTR for the different segments. It sounds like on the high end you're looking at 0.1% click.
Yeah, isn't that
Is
wild?
that right? So when you aggregate your annual site traffic, right, and you know that you can basically bring back, a tenth of a percent of those people back. If you just look at the black and white, it was like, do you want to bring those people back or not, and at what cost, right? And you could probably do the math if you know, hey, these are people fairly deep in your funnel.
Yeah.
The segmenting's great. It adds a level of I think practicality to it with some extra work, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're bringing a tenth of a percent of the people back every year into your site over and over again, what is that? There's a metric for figuring out where the ROI is for that.
And what's that real value? And that, and the important piece, anytime you're looking at click-through rate, is to understand that, and there's a lot of numbers that get floated around, but let's think of it as 1/10 of people that are going to engage with a brand that they've seen in an ad, or engage with the material that they've seen in an ad, are going to engage with it by clicking on it. So you can multiply that 10 times over to say, okay, well, 1% of people that come to my site. So every 1 in 100 in the way of traffic, I get 10,000 visits. So, the 100 people, I'm going to then be able to get to come back to my store by putting ads in front of them. And maybe they'll come back via the ad, but they may come back just by walking in because you showed them the right car.
And Reynold just sent in a good point that CTR, those percentages are based on impressions, not unique people.
Yeah, good point.
So if you narrow that down, the clicks, the unique clicks to the unique people, you actually probably have higher percentages.
Yeah, exactly. We can probably 10x that again.
Thanks, Reynold.
Yeah, really good point. And that's actually, we'll talk about those pieces in a sec. Let's go through, so just on the effectiveness side of this piece of the world. So reminding the shopper, went a little bit too far, reminding the shopper what they've seen and that you've got what they want, right? So you can basically say, okay, you were looking at these cars and you're likely correct, in many ways, but you can be more accurate by taking more time and getting more detailed in the way that you segment. So predictive retargeting, again, segmentation via VIN or by VIN. So basically saying, okay, you've looked at this specific car or these specific cars, and we understand what kind of cars you've been looking at. So you didn't look at these ones. We're going to make sure you see them. Right, so basically saying, okay, you've come in, you've looked at these 3 sedans, and they're all within the same sort of price range and maybe color, that sort of stuff. A couple of weeks later, I see you in the retargeting segment, and I know that you looked at those cars, so I'm going to make sure you see these 3 new ones that we just got on Dealer Trade, and these other 4 new ones that we just got off the truck. Right? So now we're taking the information that we know from that customer and targeting that customer with more in the way of relevant vehicles that we've got available to show them. So this is that level up on the retargeting side of things, and really being able to understand what that customer's interested in. So we're talking about. Go ahead.
To clarify there, go back to that banner slide. What you're suggesting is, and these are speed shift types of banners, where you're actually putting VINs, like actual vehicles in stock that they've either looked at or that are like the ones they've looked at.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of familiarity when they see this banner. It's like, oh, I was looking at that.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's, there's these ones in this image here, look more like stock. This particular dealership does new with stock photos, and then they'll do pre-owned, of course, with live photos. We always recommend that pre-owned with live as being particularly important in going down that path. So, when we're talking about getting vehicles out in front of people, getting the right cars out in front of people, making sure that you're then relating what they've seen to other vehicles you can show them. Because just, it's like the last vehicle seen idea. Just showing them cars that they've already seen is kind of like banging them on the head again with that same car. Yes, it's more relevant, but how cool is it to say, hey, I know you were looking at that 230i. Well, what about upgrading to the 3 Series and getting the 320? They're in approximately the same price range, right? Or what about saying, hey, we've got this pre-owned 335. It's maybe a couple years old, and has low kilometers on it, it's still going to be in that same sort of price range.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more value that comes from that along the way. The process for actually, let's talk to Chad first. I was going to get into the how-to.
Oh, Chad, I like Chad.
Chad, he's a good guy.
That's a nice guy.
He's that guy. He might actually be like a 20+ car dude. So that's not such
I think
a bad.
so. I don't know. He looks more like a Walmart salesperson than me.
Yeah, he might be a tenor.
A Walmart in Hagerstown. Ian, didn't you say he was a distant cousin of yours or something?
Indeed,
okay.
He is.
But he's not from Vancouver.
No, I got to chat with him about how he ties his ties and help him with that and that sort of thing. But we'll get. But,
oh wow.
Yeah,
that is bad. I see that.
There's a problem with my attention for detail. So look, with this, you're talking about that customer that's come in. They've been on the lot, and they were sitting in that 2015 Ford F-150 XLT. And then we call them up, and we can actually say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that we just got this 2017 XLT delivered. And with the financing rates and all that sort of stuff, we can actually give you a monthly price that's going to be very similar, if not the same, as what you were looking at on that 2015. So now it's like, okay, holy smokes. Like, I was checking out this car, and now you know that you've got this, and you've got the same price range, and you can make all this happen, and you're going to get me into this new ride. And I'm super excited because now, right, you're giving me something way more interesting to think about. Same sort of idea on that ad. That ad is coming up, and it's got something that is so super relevant based on the information that we've learned about that customer from what they've looked at on your site. Right? And so the physical details of how to get that done, right? This doesn't live within the AdWords world or within the Google Display Network and within Facebook. This lives within higher levels of technology. And there's other folks out doing similar stuff, but a lot of great agencies that are capable of doing this out in the marketplace and really asking your own agency, hey, I want to try this speech of predictive retargeting or whatever it is, and looking in the details for that. So it is definitely on the advanced side. So when we're talking about folks who may be newer to this environment and wanting to make some cool stuff happen, well, realistically, this isn't something that you can do off the shelf. There isn't off-the-shelf technology that you can do this with. It is significantly more complex, but it brings significant value. I was talking about the effectiveness side of things, right? Reminding them what they've got, but entice them with those cars that they haven't seen that fit within their decision set. And that's really the differentiator. It's like, okay, we've got this data now that says, hey, you looked at these cars. What about these ones? These are going to be interesting to you too, and getting them back again and again. So we'll just hit a couple of these. I think we're bumping over time here. We'll hit a couple of these things really quick. So super important when you're running all of these things and you're setting up the parameters. Like we talked about the length of time, we want to be talking about frequency cap as well. So avoid stalking, right? You don't want to go too far. Maybe if you're talking about 7 to 11 times in a certain period, that sort of thing, that's fine. But when you start being everywhere all the time, you drive people a little nuts. Overexposure, you're going to get a reduced performance rate on that. Right, so for us, we're talking in the neighborhood of a high traffic user. You wouldn't want them to see more than 10 impressions per day per person. All of these things, though, should be a test and measure. So what's it look like if we just run 5? What's it look like if we run 15? Does this improve or reduce performance? Right. So figure out the metrics that you want to look at, whether it's click-through rate, whether it's post-click performance, and make decisions there. Another piece of it is undesirable sites. So you don't want to be associated with questionable sites, and that can happen within remarketing efforts. Even if it's just something as as basic as showing up within a gaming environment that you don't think is appropriate. Maybe it's a war-based gaming and you don't want to be associated with that, or it's some sort of dating site and you don't want to be associated with that. Well, that's fine.
Does the dealer have control of that? Can they?
Yeah, so once you look at your campaign, you can look at that information and take those sites out. So make sure you're looking at the undesirable site list effectively and taking those pieces out. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's delivery options. So, you can take them out in category. So you can say you don't want anything in game, right? You see over here, you don't want anything in game, or you don't want anything that's associated with death or tragedy, associated with this juvenile or gross. So you can have sections, and you can also get into specifics, right? And see, what are those specific sites, and eliminate those. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Cool. So then endpoints, right? We were talking about that. Really, for the dealer side of things, I'd say stop after 30 days. Again, test and measure. If you want to test longer, test shorter. So what kind of performance benefit you get out of that? But when you're doing too much in the way of retargeting, right? You're with them too long. You're going to be with them long after purchase vehicle. Hopefully from you. Experimenting with suppression, and this is one that's a little more complex, but basically you can get lists out of your CRM and put them into your retargeting system and say, okay, omit these people, right? As far as the ones that, and not as many will hit as you might think, right? You're putting in email lists, and in the Google machine, they can do it with Gmail associated lists, that sort of thing. But you can get into suppression of who you show things to. If they've maybe seen the thank you page, you can actually do that systematically in your system. If they've gone through and they've seen a thank you page, and e-commerce does this a lot, if you've got an empty basket, you'll get retargeted more readily than if you've gone through and done the transaction. Well, of course, for us as dealers, we don't have the ability to do the transaction, right? So we need to figure out some other way to decide whether that customer has been confirmed or not. So maybe you can do something where you send an email to every customer who's finished a transaction, who's purchased a vehicle. You send an email over, and on that there's a pixel that puts them into the suppression list. So as soon as they bought a car, they're in that list, and you're able to suppress them from retargeting. Right, so there's a bunch of ways to do it. Sometimes those are frankly prohibitive relative to the effort versus the benefit, but things to consider. And then the last piece, of course, there's tons of resources. We're huge fans of bringing additional value to the marketplace, like we did with MVI. It doesn't have what we did for that award doesn't have immediate benefit into what we do specifically, right? Like it doesn't suddenly increase our value proposition, but it helps the marketplace. And so other things that help the marketplace can be found over in our resource section. Lots of other webinars, lots of videos, how-to videos as far as setting up vehicle detail page analytics, and all sorts of other good stuff. So I highly recommend people head over and check that out at their convenience.
Yeah, do that. I love what you guys. You guys do a lot of just good quality videos, real informative. I mean, as we see, this is advanced stuff, and it's not easy. Dealers need good partners for this, and I know you run the circuit and do you get this message out there wherever you can. So folks that are watching, definitely check that out. speedshiftmedia.com/resources, right?
You got it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ian, you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, I think that's pretty well to go. I'm generally pretty easy to find, theoretically, that is. Not always the case, but my number's there, and you can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I always recommend, and actually it happens on a regular basis, folks that have been on webinars, that sort of stuff, connect with me on LinkedIn, because then you'll see other pieces of information that I push out. Same thing within the Twitter space. So good to connect with people there.
I got to call bullshit, Ian. I can never find you at these events. You are like in and out like nobody's business. Where's Ian? Well, he'll be here in an hour. Okay. And then you're gone.
And then all of a sudden he's gone. Yeah, no, I've been bombing into a few lately. I think I was in Tampa I don't think I was there for 24 hours. No, I wasn't in Tampa for 24 hours. When I did that Toronto thing, I didn't even hit that auto remarketing. I didn't hit it for more than 10. But I think definitely the next digital dealer, I'll be there for the duration. So look forward to seeing people there.
Big party?
Yeah, it's time for SpeedShift to have a party.
You know what? We actually, it's funny you should mention. So we just did this. If you can read it, it's a little tough, etched glass, but SpeedShift Media VIP experience. So we just did a couple very small events. We hosted a game in Atlanta. Hosted a Hawks game, and then we hosted a game at the Rangers when we were in New York, and had a lot of fun with that. And we like having these small, tight-knit events, so there may be one of those coming up.
Okay, cool.
Sounds
All
great.
right. All right. I'm going to claim host again, but
Do it. And thank you guys so much for having me.
yeah,
you.
definitely. So, folks, hang tight with us. I know we've been on here a while, and for those that are still either watching the recording or the live version, we really appreciate you sticking around, and hopefully you guys enjoy this. Try to have a little bit of fun too. So, like I said, Ian's team we're going to get a recording of today's webinar. Ian's team will make it available on their site and a link to the slides. We will also put the full recording here and send out an email to everyone that's registered that they can view that. When you get that email, folks, there will be a link in there to an online survey. We're just asking you if you could take a few minutes to give us your feedback on the webinar, because obviously we want to do everything we can to improve what we're doing. We are trying to accomplish something different, so keep an eye out for that. And like I said, we'll get an edited version of this webinar that really focuses on the highlights, and we'll get a blog post out there on DealerRefresh. So be sure you're subscribed to our newsletter. Most of our newsletters pretty much look like this. We promote the upcoming webinars.
It's a good shot.
In the blue box. That is a good shot. This one links to Kevin. Yeah, Kevin's review on Digital Dealer.
Nice.
In these newsletter emails are sponsored links, and we love it because these generate a lot of click activity, and they always link to educational sponsored branded material. I think this one, right? Did I lose it? I must have lost it. Here's what I wanted to click on. Nope, that's not it. Anyway, when you click on those, you go to the branded advertorial on DealerRefresh, and then the next day you'll also get an email version of that same advertorial. So if you see one for SpeedShift and you click on that, then we're going to deliver to you some additional content around SpeedShift. So keep an eye out for the blue boxes. Our next webinar coming up in May 11th is with Mike Columbus, and we're going to be looking at how to build your auto sales, your brand for an auto sales professional. Anything else, Jeff? You didn't think of anything else?
That's it.
Good.
Good.
Thanks for being here, guys, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. All right, folks, thanks for staying tuned, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
All right, stop share.